from some people that are going to inspire us and help us want to get involved in being active and making some change in Sonoma County in the coming election. The first speaker that we're going to hear from is Gary Wysocky, who is a sitting Santa Rosa City Council member.
Thank you. Thank you for all being here. It's my pleasure to be an honor to be the first speaker, quite frankly. We're all here because we have the same basic values, and they're not so different from the values that the rest of our neighbors share in this community. But then we have a divergence. While we all want to be safe and we want to raise our children in our home, there's some of us that are less populous than the others, shall we say. And that's what brings us together. I really believe that this group believes in the basic human dignity of a fair day's wages for fair pay, right? Yeah. We believe in responsible environmentalism. We believe in neighborhood community input. That's why we're here. We don't dismiss it as stirring up the pot. As one of my colleagues was recently told on the city council, don't stir up the pot. And that's what democracy is, stirring up the pot sometimes. But more importantly is you can't raise these issues if you're not on that dais. I got into community activism a long time ago because I wanted to get a connector between the junior college and this closed smart station. But I only say this because the hearing that certified the environmental impact report that we weren't going to get this was filled with people that wanted this connected, this bridge, if you will. And we probably had 150 people there in an afternoon. And they had 7 electeds behind that dais. I say they because 6 of them voted for not to spend the money from this community bond on this connector. And I came away from there, and the reason I tell the story is it doesn't matter how many you have on that side of the dais, it matters how many you have behind the dais with the vote. Simple fact. If you can't do that arithmetic, just look at the Santa Rosa City Council and see how many of those decisions you've liked lately. Okay, because it's, I wish I could say I've liked a lot more. And trust me, it's harder sitting up there than it is out there sometimes. But I bring that story only because if we don't elect people that reflect our neighborhoods and our values, we're still shoveling sand uphill. And I know you all share 80 to 90% of my core beliefs, maybe 70, maybe 95. But the trick is for each one of you, who I know we're going to vote and I contact you, because you are, that's why you're here. You got to go to 10, you got to get 10 people or 15 people motivated to contact 10 or 15 people of their friends.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
If we don't do that, we don't win. It's just as simple as that. And it's not about me, but I'm just going to talk about my recent election. I'm up against a Tea Party-leaning Republican from Orange County. And I got creamed. For a lot of reasons, but I got creamed. And you can't tell me his values. The first thing he said at one of our community forums, because it wasn't a debate, well, we poured more cement for freeway lanes down there than we promised the voters. That was one of his positives. I'm like, I keep saying that, please. Because I'm going to do okay with the majority of Sonoma County's communities. Unfortunately, we had the highest turnout in the state of, 35%?
Yeah.
40%? And those are the folks that want the status quo just the way it is. Well, that's the challenge here. And as the first speaker, my challenge is to get you to go out there and get 10 or 15 of your friends, to get 10 or 15 of their friends, to get 10 or 15 of their friends. And don't just rely on Facebook. Because there's people in this room that helped pass out about 5,000 of my flyers to West County. And I'm grateful for that, don't get me wrong. But let's talk about the allocation of resources. Maybe they should have, with the limited amount of time that they had, given out 2,500 of those flyers and called them and said, please go vote. I don't really have the answer to that, and I don't want to dampen your enthusiasm, but there are races in this county in November, local, late races, that will affect local positions. I look at Dot for the Board of Supervisors, I look at Curtis and Chris for the City Council, and Lee back there. Dan Fudge is not here for District 4. And most folks have no clue after the president what that ballot means. That's your task. So, you know, when I walked for John Kerry in Arizona, it was really empowering in a lot of ways. What was really frustrating, I think we spent an hour and a half every morning deciding what the strategy was going to be. And I'll tell you right now, there were Republicans for the incumbent, Mr. Bush, already handing out literature at shopping malls. And we're still in the circular firing squad, trying to decide where we're going. And we've got to stop doing that. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for your expressions of support for me personally. But, you know, it is our community. We can take it, we can change it, and we can make it better for our descendants, because that's what we're ultimately here for. Thank you.
I'm hoping that Julie Combs will be able to join us and talk to her. She's not here so far. I haven't seen her. Next, we have Caroline Banuelos, who is the Northern California Vice Chair of the Progressive Caucus of the California Democratic Party, among many other things. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's an honor for me to speak to all of you. I'm just thrilled. And I am the Northern California Vice Chair of the Progressive Caucus. But I'm also the chair of the Sonoma County Community Local Law Enforcement Task Force. And I'm just so happy, and not in a bad way, but happy that today I don't have to speak to you about that. Yay. I have been speaking about that for 7 months. So I'm just really grateful. Thank you, Alice, for this chance. What I wanted to talk about is kind of just to touch, dovetail on what Gary was saying about the situation that we have here in Sonoma County. And so I want to talk about, as the vice chair of the Progressive Caucus, what does it mean to be a progressive voter, right? I mean, what does that really mean? And I looked it up, and there's lots of different, definitions of what it means to be a progressive. Of course, it's rooted in Teddy Roosevelt and a lot of other things. But what does it mean today to voters when you say I'm a progressive? And some people think that nonpartisan races, it doesn't matter, right? Almost everyone registers as a Democrat. So what's the difference? And it's a nonpartisan race, and Gary's absolutely right. Most people do not have a clue, right? And that's the problem. That's really what we're up against, because there is definitely a difference. If you've been watching the council for the last 4 years, or if you've been like me and you've been watching it for the last 25 years, I'm telling you, nothing has changed. It's really sad. Everybody keeps saying it's so divided. No, it's been that way for years, if you've really been watching it. So, I think to myself, okay, what as a progressive voter, what do we do? What do we expect from our candidates? What are we looking for? And how do we change what's going on, the things that Gary was talking about? The obvious answer is, he was saying, yes, we go out and we get behind candidates, we walk precincts, we make phone calls. That's what we do as grassroots. But I would take a step back for a moment and say, okay, but what am I looking for in a candidate? It's very easy to just assume we all have the same values, or as Gary noted, maybe 85% maybe. I think we really need to ask that question because of the fact that so many of these candidates say they're Democrats when they are not. I think, when I think about a candidate that I want to support, that I want to endorse, I'm looking for someone who knows who they are, is comfortable with their positions, and is going to get out there and stand up for them. That's what I'm looking for, right? Somebody that has political courage, right? And I don't know where Gary went, but that's a guy that has political courage. The majority 5, I call them. They primarily are there to protect the status quo. That's why they're there. And it's in my view, a conservative status quo. And they don't allow outsiders in their circle. It's very closed. I had one of them, and not necessarily the current majority, but one of them say to me, "Oh, I like you and everything, but I can't be seen talking to you because you are on that side, and that to me is really a reflection reflection of what's going on at the national level, right? That's exactly, they don't talk to each other, no more, no bipartisanship, none of that exists. So, how are we going to change things when you've got a closed situation? The press says it's the minority, but it's not the minority. We all heard, and this is the other thing, that recently another candidate got in the race. And what does she say? Oh, I'm going to bring everybody together. People are tired of the drama at the council. And you know what I hear when I hear that? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, really? Didn't we just hear that 4 years ago? Or 2 years ago, excuse me. I mean, that's the same garbage that they're putting out there, that they're going to bring the other side together. Have they done that? No. You know why? Because they don't need to. They have a majority. They don't need the two in the minority. They can just ignore them, and that's what they do. And that's what they've been doing for over 25 years. So, to me, that's just rhetoric. We do need to get behind candidates that will bring change, long overdue change, that will welcome people of color, welcome neighborhoods, welcome our community, because that's not what we're getting right now. So, it's important to know, what these candidates stand for, what are their proposals, but more importantly, how are they going to get them through? What are they going to do? How are they going to make that happen? And do they have the political will to take, when you're in politics, and I'm finding this out really bad at the task force, it's not for the faint of heart. It is tough, right? It is ugly, and you have to be able to take it. And I take my hat off to Gary, because I don't know how he does it. It's just, because that's the way it is all the time. When you're working when you are in the minority and you've got the majority just talking like they know what the answers to everything, because they're there to protect. So, lastly, all I'm going to say is, we have candidates out there. We've got a lot of progressive candidates in the room. Whatever you do, no matter what, please be sure that you have the stamina to stand up for what you believe in, and don't let them tell you otherwise. Thank you.
CGP is interested not only in getting progressives elected, but also issues that are important to progressives. One of the issues that will be becoming very important to us is the proposed living wage ordinance for Sonoma County. And we're very fortunate to have today Norman Kram from the Sonoma County Living Wage Coalition to speak to us about that.
My name is Norman Kram. I serve as a retired clergy person at the Episcopal Church. I volunteered with the Living Wage Coalition for over a decade. Part of my motivation for living wage is in carrying out my baptismal vow to promote the dignity of every human. And this means promoting an hourly wage that offers a wage earner the dignity of economic self-sufficiency. In the next 5 minutes, I will answer 4 questions. 1, what does playing chess with a pigeon have in common with negotiating with the Tea Party? What is an ethical reason for supporting a living wage ordinance? What is it like to work for less than a living wage? And what can you do to support a living wage ordinance? First, how is working with the Tea Party similar to playing chess with a pigeon? The answer is, when the chess match is over, the pigeon knocks over all the pieces, defecates on the board, and then struts around like he won. Second, what is the ethical reason for supporting a living wage ordinance of $15? The answer begins with the human quality of empathy. The simple definition of empathy is the ability to feel what others feel, to recognize the world of another person. For instance, a family member loses his or her job. You feel her pain. You feel his fear. The codification of the human gift of empathy is the golden rule: to do unto others as we ourselves would want to have done unto ourselves. The golden rule based on the human gift of empathy applies to a county wage of $15 like this. If you busted your tushy for 8 hours a day cleaning public bathrooms and picking up mud and barf at entrances and exits to a county building, you would want to make enough to support your family. If you mowed grass, pruned bushes, and hedged lawns in the hot sun or in the cold of winter, you would want to make enough of a wage for the dignity of supporting yourself. If you cared for elderly persons, dressing, cleaning, feeding them day after day in a smelly, poorly vented bedroom, you would want to make enough to support your own elderly parents. If you walked a beat as a security guard in the windy cold and the dark of night, fighting off sleep and boredom, knowing that you are accountable for the public property, you would want to be compensated enough to raise your own family. This application of the Golden Rule as it applies to 4 recipients of a county living wage ordinance. Question 3. What is it like for a hard-working, undercompensated handyman when he has to respond to a government wage challenge? The story goes like this, maybe fictitious. A guy whose business it was to do odd jobs nobody else wanted to do was investigated by a government agent on paying proper wages. The government agent demanded, "I need a list of your employees and how much you pay each of them." The guy stated, "There is Clarence, my hired hand. He's been with me for 3 years. I pay him $200 a week plus free breakfast and lunch." Then there is this mentally challenged guy. He works about 18 hours a day and does about 90% of the work. He makes $10 a week, pays his own room and board, and I buy him a case of Lagunitas every Saturday night so he can cope with this life. He also gets to sleep with my wife occasionally. The agent demanded, "That's the guy I want to talk to, the mentally challenged one." Replied the handyman, "That will be me, sir." The dignity of inadequate compensation for hard work. So what can you do for the passage of a living wage ordinance? You can sign the petition that I have on 3 clipboards out in the vestibule, and all I need, most of all, is your name and where you live and any other information that you'd like to give. Thank you very much for your commitment to the dignity of all God's people.
I might also add that the Living Wage Coalition in Sonoma County has a website that you can take a look at. As far as I know, we are scheduled to have a meeting on August 23rd where the ordinance is going to be rolled out. It's going to be at the Glazer Center, I believe, from 10 to 12. I recommend highly that you check back for updates on that. This is something we can actually do if we put our shoulders to the wheel, and it's really important. I just heard that Julie Holmes is ill and will not be able to join us today. She wanted me to make that announcement, and we're very sorry to miss her. Okay, so now we get to hear from a couple of candidates. Chris Coursey is a candidate for Santa Rosa City Council, and he will tell you anything else about himself.
Thanks. It's really good to be here. Thank all of you for caring enough to spend part of your Saturday afternoon doing something like this. Too many people don't care enough, and I'm hoping that the predictions are wrong and there's going to be more than just this many people who vote in November. But at this point, I'm going to pretend that you are the voters who are going to show up at the polls, and I'm going to convince you to vote for me. Gary and Caroline talked about change, and what we need on our city council in Santa Rosa is change. I represent change, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself. A lot of you know that I worked for a long time for the Press Democrat. I wasn't lucky enough to be born and grow up in Santa Rosa, but I chose Santa Rosa as my hometown when I was 25 years old. Came here to take a job with the Press Democrat. I was a reporter for more than 15 years, and as a reporter, as a daily journalist, you don't get to have an opinion. You don't get to join groups. You don't get to be an activist in the community. What you do is you try and tell the stories of the community, and that's what I did. I did my activism in those years for my union at the Press Democrat. I was the leader of the union at the Press Democrat for most of those 15 years, first 15 years I was there. I negotiated contracts, I defended our contracts, I represented my fellow employees in disputes with management. I filed grievances and took cases to arbitration. I stirred the pot. I challenged the status quo. In 1999, I was lucky enough to be chosen as the first new columnist at the newspaper in 50 years. First new news columnist. And I got to stir the pot in a different way. I got to have an opinion. I got to make my opinion known. And I got to challenge the status quo. And that included challenging the editorial page opinions of the newspaper. Their opinion and my opinion were often very different because the Press Democrat is an institution in Santa Rosa, and it is comfortable with the status quo. I've never been comfortable with the status quo. I'm not now. I left the paper in 2007 when I saw an opportunity to do something really positive for our community. I went to work for the Smart Rail Project. I helped get that ballot measure passed in 2008, and I worked in the early stages of getting the railroad up and under construction. I left in 2011. Now I'm my own boss. I work for myself as a freelance writer, and I have the time and the interest to run for city council. As Gary and Caroline both mentioned, this is not a highly rewarding endeavor, but I think it can be very important. The city council has 3 positions coming open in November. 2 of the incumbents are not going to run. So no matter what else happens, change is coming to the city council. The change that happens depends on who gets elected. I think that the people who get invited here to speak are the right kind of change that we are looking for on the council. I think it's important to have people with progressive values. When I think of progressive values that the city council can actually help put forward, I look at jobs and housing as 2 of the most important things. On jobs, I love what you guys are doing with the Living Wage Coalition. I support what you're doing. I'd actually like to see it taken a little farther to an increase in the minimum wage to $15 an hour. So not just government workers and contractors are getting that $15 an hour, but everybody in the community is getting at least $15 an hour, producing the kind of economic boost that will allow our government agencies to pay that extra money too. So let's raise everybody up, not just people who work. Housing is also important. You know, we've gone through a period where there hasn't been a lot of new housing construction in Santa Rosa in a long time. When that changes, and it will, there's going to be a lot of pressure to build the most profitable kind of housing possible. Big homes, small lots, and for a lot of money. We need to build affordable housing for people. One of the key things that Santa Rosa has as a tool in their toolbox but doesn't enforce is requiring 15% of every housing project over a certain size to be affordable housing. And instead, developers get away with putting money into a fund, an in lieu fee. We need to build affordable housing as part of every project in Santa Rosa. And I want to see that. I know my time is probably up. And I just want to tell you, I have a website, chrisforsantarosa.com. I'm collecting signatures on my nomination papers. I need 30 signatures to get on the ballot. It's not an endorsement, but I'd love to have your signature. If you're a registered voter in Santa Rosa, you can talk to me after we're all done. Thanks a lot.
You want to say your name 3 times right now so we can hear it?
Chris Coursey. Chris Coursey. Chris Coursey.
Thank you very much, Chris. And we're also going to hear from Curtis Byrd, also a candidate
this afternoon. I want to just say a couple things about myself and then talk a little bit about why I'm running for Santa Rosa City Council. And I wrote it all down, but after hearing the blah, blah, blah speech, I don't want to blah, blah, blah you to death. But I think we need a lot less conflict on the Santa Rosa City Council. And by that I mean that we need to be out of the national news. We don't need to close City Hall. We don't need the divisiveness that puts us in the national news because it prevents us from being able to have companies relocate to Santa Rosa, to grow our city, to increase our tax coffers. That's what I mean by that. We need greater cooperation. And that means partnering with companies, that means partnering with voices who haven't been heard, and partnering with the community at large on all ideas.